Hi, good morning everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar on overcoming the skills shortage in the software testing industry. I'm going to start off just with some introductions. So I'm Chloe Garrett, I'm the Head of Marketing here at Ten10, and joining me today we also have Ash Gawthorpe, who is our Solutions Director, and Ryan Hannigan, who is Client Development Director here at Ten10. So in today's webinar, we thought it'd just be useful just to initially take a look back at the profile of what a traditional software tester used to look like before we start discussing some of the changes that we've been observing in the industry and the impact that we're seeing this have on the kind of in-demand skills. We will then be taking a bit of a look at challenges that we're hearing companies are having when it comes to attracting and hiring talent. And we're going to then talk you through the Ten10 solution that we believe will help to overcome many of these challenges. We do have some FAQs at the end that we're going to talk through, but there is a Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you do have any questions as we're running through, please feel free to add some questions in there and we'll do our absolute best to answer them at the end if there's time. If we do run out of time, then we will follow up with anybody who's asked questions, so we will get back to you. But on that note, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ash. All yours.
Thanks very much, Chloe. So the first step is really just talking about that traditional tester role and kind of our experience of what the traditional tester looks like. So we tend to find that people fall into two camps. So the first camp are people that have elected to become a software tester and sort of driven their career towards that. And then in the other camp, we find people that have just kind of found themselves doing it and almost falling into doing it. Often the people that fall into doing it, they've come from the business, from another area, possibly the help desk or some other business function, or maybe through tech support. What we find with people with this background is that they have excellent domain knowledge and also really good knowledge of the business and its internal working processes, and crucially, how to get things done. Additionally, we also find them to generally be pretty organized and also with good attention to detail. One of the challenges is that we find that they lack that structured test training and the expertise in structured test approaches. As a result of maybe working in one or a small number of companies, they tend to accept that the way that it's done is the way things should be done. And where they do identify change or things that could be done differently, often they're not seen as senior enough or experienced enough to provide that strategic advice and to see it through. Finally, one of the points we're going to keep coming back to today is this point of how we require additional technical skills now with testers. And this is just becoming more and more apparent over time, and the range of technical skills that we expect them to have and that they have to have is becoming more acute. Just move on to the next slide, please, Chloe. Thank you. So this word cloud here, so this is just taken from our training course essentially, and it's really just there to give an idea of the kind of size and scale of the challenge that's there nowadays. And this is a completely moving feast. New tools, new methodologies, new approaches, new types of testing come along every week. And one of the challenges is really kind of trying to stay on top of that. But essentially what we're really asking testers to do nowadays is to do more. We're asking them to become more technical, and on the other hand, we're also asking them to become more collaborative, to be able to communicate with the business and different stakeholders that come from a different background to them. And it's quite a big ask, really. Move on to the next slide, please, Chloe. There's a lot of sort of talk in the industry at the moment around kind of DevOps, so that alignment of development, operation, test, and QA. And we work with clients at one end of the scale where everything they have is internally developed and they're quite mature down this cycle, so they have the ability to make a change in their code. They will commit that change, that will build the software, a set of automated tests will run against it, and then perhaps it's even deployed into live automatically. That doesn't work for all businesses. We also work with companies at the other end of the scale that have very large ERP systems with lots of third parties involved and lots of integrations, and those systems are deployed quarterly. So whilst they're approaching it from that point of view, they're still very keen to ensure that development, ops, and test are as optimized as they can be and aligned as they can be, and that requirement for collaboration throughout, really. And the important point about the collaboration, I think, is that what that requires is empathy across the different teams. So it requires testers to be aware of sort of the challenges that the devs have, the ops have, to be able to sort of resonate with them and to them to be able to work closely with them and to be effective with them. One phrase I often hear talked about is this requirement for devs need to be able to test and testers need to be able to code or need to be able to develop. I think that's true, and that's becoming more true as time progresses, but I think that hides a little bit of complexity there as well. So if we just move on to the next slide again, please. So this is a summary of the different types of skills that we need nowadays, particularly in Agile and DevOps. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not fully aligned to Agile and DevOps. We're looking for this irrespective of the methodology that you do or the type of testing or the types of systems you're deploying. But the key thing is that spread again. We're spreading into the technical skills required. We need people to be able to code or at least understand code, to be able to work with test environments, virtualization, to have those sort of SDET skills. At the same time, on the other side, we expect them to be able to understand those business processes, to be able to work with those senior stakeholders, and to be able to communicate at all levels across the business. The key point there is that what we're seeing is that the skills gap is becoming more acute, and that organizations are realizing that they need these skills more and more. So in summary, tester of today and tomorrow, kind of what we're looking for. So on the technical side, we need them. So we've got digital first there. In my mind, that really just means that mobile is becoming more and more prevalent, and the challenges with mobile around the range of platforms, the range of devices, that requires a different approach to testing. And that needs, and the overall test strategy that you pull together needs to be mindful of that in order to get the best out of it. You need to be comfortable with code. The ability to work with databases, to be able to work with command line tools. I think the days are gone where you maybe had a functional tester in the old days that said, well, if it's not got a GUI in front of it, I can't work with that. We now expect people to be able to SSH onto a machine, to access a database, to check if a row's there, to grep log files, to see if a particular entry is there, for example, on Linux, but obviously on Windows systems as well, and the equivalent thereof. Knowledge of networking and architecture. So when we start talking about cloud deployments, on-prem, hybrid deployments, they kind of know what we're talking about. They're able to find their way around those machines. You can't, for example, look for log files on the server if, first of all, you can't navigate that network diagram to work out how you connect to it. And that experience of working across different SDLCs, so Agile, Waterfall, and often everything else in between. And crucially, working with organizations where both are going on at the same time. One situation we come across commonly is where the front end is being developed in an agile fashion, and that's deployed quickly and iteratively. And that talks to a back-end system which is deployed very infrequently and very much developed in that sort of waterfall fashion. When those two worlds come together, that requires a specific approach as well. And then on the softer side, we need people that are able to communicate effectively, and not just within their own teams, but across them throughout the business, to be able to manage stakeholders, to be empathetic, to be able to understand the challenges that other teams have, and to think about what they can do themselves to make things easier for upstream and downstream teams. Because often test is that kind of coming together, that point where everything sort of meets in the middle, essentially. Quick to learn and pick up new skills. I mean, I guess the only constant is change, really. The fact that as the number of platforms and the number of ways to develop software increases, as do the number of test tools that need to be used. And I think the days where we had one Uber test tool that allowed you to test across all platforms and all devices, we're seeing that disappear now. Clients are forming testing solutions from a variety of different tools, really using the best tool for the job at the right time. They need to be adaptive, and we need that collaborative approach. When you bring all that together, in order to test these complex systems, the idea is you need people doing what they're good at, which is being able to do exploratory testing, being able to spot patterns, usability side of testing as well, and then having machines doing what they're good at, which is running automated tests over and over again in a sort of consistent and repeatable fashion. But of course, you need the people to be able to create those tests, maintain those tests, and make them effective and efficient.
Thank you, Ash. I think that's a good summary of the marketplace where we are right now. It's obviously it's one thing to identify the skills that we're going to need, and it's absolutely quite another thing to go out and source them. Already we're finding that demand is outstripping supply. As with all emerging trends that we faced within the IT industry, there are a number of the usual challenges that we come across: too few suitable candidates, an increased competition for recruiting them, salaries that spiral out of control, and not to mention the opportunities that are they talking up their experience or staying in a job just long enough to enhance their CVs before perhaps heading back out to the contract market. I think another unique thing of today's market is with the emphasis on collaborative working, perhaps the option to use low-cost offshore providers as a viable alternative has gone. So therefore increasing the necessity more to hire high-quality local resource. This slide, I think, will resonate with a few of us out there. There's a selection of all too common sound bites that we hear from our customers. There's numerous examples of clients spending months searching in vain for the right candidate, or as I said, even worse, having candidates join just to walk out the door a few months later, wasting money, time, and effort. There's a great deal of pressure, I think, to make the right decision. We're constantly having to weigh up the short-term options of contractors. Obviously, they bring the required skills and can hit the ground running, but that does come at a premium. You always risk any inherent knowledge walking out the door at the end of a contract, and then you have the long-term option of permanent hires, but that carries its own unique set of risks and costs as well. So at Ten10, we've looked to provide a solution we think that strikes a good balance between the two. The Ten10 Engineer program provides the benefits of both the flexibility of contracting, but the permanency of permanent recruitment, whilst mitigating a good few of the risks. Hiring an engineer does provide you with an individual that's hungry to learn and develop their skills and progress their path, their chosen career path. They can easily be moulded to fit into your working practices, and once they've become a real asset to the team, you have that option to take them on permanently. We've got some really good working examples of it. We have a financial services client that's been tasked with maintaining a slightly dated legacy application. They've found themselves becoming very reliant on a small pool of contractors due to the scarcity of application knowledge. They struggle to find permanent resources because, as it's an outdated technology, it's not an attractive skill set for people to come and accept a job with. So they were a bit of a rock and a hard place. We talked with them. They made the decision to invest in a team of our engineers. To start with, we spent 2 or 3 weeks just learning the application. Once that was successfully completed, we immersed them into the test team, and because our engineers are committed to us for a 2-year period, the organisation were able to benefit not from just the continuity of the knowledge, but also a lower resource cost. And also a fairly unique benefit that working with young talent brings is a new input and fresh ideas into the existing team. We've got other examples of large systems integrators who've got to deploy projects across the country. They're struggling with technical test resources in tricky locations, which perhaps not near big cities. And again, find themselves having to pay constantly increasing premiums for in-demand contractor skills. On this occasion, we've actually tailored our academy program so that it's providing our engineers with the opportunity to become familiar with the specific tools and techniques and technical landscape. Again, solving a short-term need for the client's project demand, but also letting them build an appropriately skilled team of permanent resource. It works for individual projects, for clients that are just looking to hire one individual resource. We all know that the recruitment process can be very lengthy, a great deal of time sifting CVs, running interviews and going through that onboarding process. Again, no guarantee of success even when resources are in place. So the benefit of the engineers is that there are permanent members of staff, but they join you on a contract basis. You get the opportunity to see how well they perform, how quickly they grasp your specific unique challenges of your client, your environment, and how quickly they fit into your company culture. Only then, when it's right, do you then sort of go through the discussion of transferring them permanently across to you. So we think the engineer model is proving a real success, both as a springboard for our graduates in their chosen career path, but also to customers that are facing the challenge of hiring the new breed of tester. I'll pass back to Ash to explain a little bit more about how we run our academy process.
Thanks very much, Ryan. So in terms of how this works in practice, the first thing is we start off with people. So these are bright young graduates with the right attitude and aptitude. We don't insist on a technical degree. We test their technical aptitude as part of the assessment centre, because otherwise we find ourselves cutting down on the number of people that that are able to do the course. For somebody to have a computer science or a maths or physics degree, that generally involves them making a decision when they're about 14 years old to lead them down that path. So in terms of numbers, we have north of 1,000 applicants now for each academy cohort, with each academy cohort being around 20. So it's the top kind of 1-2% that make it through. In terms of the assessment centre, before you get there, we have video interviews, Skype interviews, face-to-face interviews. That allows us to get to a number of sort of circa 50 for 20 places, which we bring into the assessment centre. So the assessment centre is a day long. It tests the candidate's ability to work in a team. We have a face-to-face interview, and we also have a number of tests. So there's a maths test, there's a technical aptitude test, which in the sort of near 200 people we've put through this process, that technical aptitude test correlates very well with how well they do in the technical courses and the technical aspects of testing that we need to do, without them having to have that technical prerequisite knowledge. There's also a sort of aptitude test to test their thinking. Off the back of that, we then move forward with sort of circa 20 candidates into the academy training program. So this is an intensive classroom-based program which is run from our office here in Leeds. It's led by practitioners. When we first started designing this, we were thinking, do we have professional trainers teaching these guys and girls, or are we better to have industry practitioners who are consultants by day, and then they're able to do the professional training in order to make them trainers as well? That's the model we employ. We find that to be quite successful. We pay them a salary from day one, and as the training is here in Leeds, we also provide them with free accommodation for the duration of that training. The training's tough. It's there. It starts before 9. It finishes finishes after 5 every day, and then they're also expected to work on the assessments, cram for the exams, and to review the training that they've been given throughout the day. In terms of appraisal, so they're continuously assessed in addition to the exams and the coursework, and really we're looking for the softer skill side of things there. So we encourage good behaviours when they're there in the classroom with us, and where we see those not so good behaviours, we provide them with feedback and get them to correct it. We try and make it quite fun. So if we see in the classroom somebody on their phone, the first person to see them on their phone, they applaud. Everybody then has to stand up and move around. It kind of hammers home a very serious point in the bad behaviours that we're really trying to discourage, but in a way which is instantly accessible. Throughout that training, we're also assessing them for their kind of cultural fit to the clients that we have requirements from. Not everybody would work well within a particular client or a particular sector, for example. So what we're able to do is we're able to align the personalities, the behaviours, the type of skills that we see them really excelling in to what the client's looking for. So in practice, that looks like the client is presented with a number of candidates where they're able to provide interviews, they're able to run them through assessments, they're able to meet with them and sort of ascertain their fit. At the point that the client is happy and we then move forward with that, there's then a client placement for 6 months or longer at a location which is decided by the client, and the engineer then relocates to that client's site on their cost for that period of time. Once they're there, there's then a continuous development program from Ten10. What this means in practice is that we have a number of online learning programs and a number of learning pathways where we are able to build on the specific tools perhaps, or development languages, or domain knowledge which is required by that client. Throughout the course, we teach them the basics and the grounding. So if we take automation as an example, we teach that in Java, we teach that with Selenium. But what they get to know are the good patterns, the good practices. And then we had one client where they needed Scala, for example. So at the end of that, we provided them with a training course in Scala, but the course was about the change from building on what they'd learned about Java to how that applies to Scala, which actually makes it much quicker. And then finally, as Ryan mentioned before, you have the option, but not the obligation, to retain that person permanently and make them part of your team. I think we're on to the next slide now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ash. So yeah, we do have a few FAQs here. One of the things that we quite often get asked, I'm going to point this out to you, Ash, is around, we mentioned about having our graduates are specifically wanting to pursue a career in testing. So how do we go about attracting them to a software testing career?
That's an interesting point. So I think the first point there is that we've seen in the last few years a huge rise in the number of graduates that are looking for careers in technology and careers in technology companies. A few years ago, there was a phase when it seemed every grad had or a large number of grads had degrees in forensic science, I think based on some TV programs that were on at the time. They've disappeared. Now what we're seeing are really young, bright guys and girls that are wanting to pursue a career in technology, but who didn't necessarily have that tech degree and make that choice at 14. Part of the job when we're bringing them in for us is to explain to them what software testing is and isn't, and what it encompasses. And one of the things that's fed back time and time in the interview is the wide range of experiences and disciplines that testing covers. So on the one hand, it's very technical. On the other hand, there's some strong psychological aspects to it. There's also the softer skills we've discussed previously, some project management aspects as well. So when you bring all that together, it's quite compelling for them, really. The other key point is that this academy program is purely and simply testing. We don't do anything else. So everybody that's coming into this program is there to do software testing. Great,
thank you. And a question I'm going to pass over to Ryan is, one of the things we also get asked about is kind of the burden of having a new graduate as part of a team. You know, somebody who comes without really having much real life kind of business world experience, office experience.
Yeah, we did very much recognise the additional demand this might place onto already busy teams. The way we try and support this is a number of key components. We maintain regular on-site visits. So we have career managers who are assigned during the academy process to support the individuals and really, I suppose, operate a pastoral care. So we are monitoring constantly their development, how they absorb and retain knowledge. We also make sure that we get customer feedback to make sure that they're working in the right ways. We encourage them through the career pathway to be constantly learning. It's not the finished article when they come on site. We keep pushing them and pushing. But also we encourage them to delve into the resources that we have as an organisation. We've had a number of other academy cohorts that create quite a network of resource to draw upon, from dealing with simple technical challenges to some of the bigger problems. So yeah, something we maintain through the whole assignment.
Okay, and the last one that we've just got on here is an FAQ, but I think this will probably cover some of the things that, that people have actually been sending questions in around, but really around how we're keeping the course content up to date with industry demands, as the kind of needs and requirements of the industry are evolving. So I'll pass that one over to you, Ash.
Sure. So there's two parts to this, really. So the first part is, how do we identify that change, and how do we identify the need for the course to change? So as I mentioned, the trainers are practitioners, so they're seeing in their day job what's going on across clients and within the industry. We also have a dedicated team within Ten10 that has one eye on the horizon in terms of what's coming down the line and what those changes are. So those changes and that sort of forward-thinking view, that's consolidated, and then that is incorporated into the academy as required. In all the times we've taught it, we've never quite taught the same course twice. At the end of every time, we fold new things into it, and also as a result of the retrospectives attended by the people that were in the classroom, but also the trainers, it's constantly improved and modified. Also, there's a point around, whilst there are lots of new technologies and lots of new tools, a lot of it is based very much on something that's happened previously. So we just had a question in as well, which I'll answer at the same time. So this is a theme of a few that have been asked. What core technologies are the testers trained in during their intensive course? So currently, they are trained in, first of all, the basic web technologies. That's HTTP, CSS, JavaScript, HTML. They're trained in sort of core enterprise architecture, so servers, networking, firewalls, and then it comes to the methodology. So there's Agile, there's mainly Agile, there's a little bit of waterfall, and then in terms of the hardcore tools, so programming, we teach them in Java, we taught them in Python before now as well. And for automation, we teach Selenium, but they're also aware of Appium for mobile. From the DevOps side of things, we teach them a little bit around Puppet, but that's off the back of training in the example that we give them. There's it runs on AWS. There's a few web services which are containerized and deployed using Docker, so they get a feel for all of that kind of thing. There's a performance test course, which is that's JMeter, but in the past we've also taught C# and the Microsoft tools for that. In terms of technology stacks, it's mainly Linux, but there's some Microsoft as well. So we teach them the Linux command line, but then also we teach them some PowerShell. So it's a taster across kind of all of them, really. What I would say is that we're also able to distribute sort of a detailed course listing in terms of the courses that we do teach and what that comprises as well. And for the people that have asked those questions, we can distribute that at the end.
Excellent, thank you, Ash. We are, I think, pretty much bang on time. So sorry if we haven't got to your question, and we will be following up with everybody kind of individually who still had questions unanswered. Or if you want to get in touch with us and discuss any of the subject matter further, or get our thoughts on anything, then you can, probably the easiest way to reach us is if you email contact@ten10.com, and we can fix up a convenient time to have a chat. So thank you again, everybody, for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye.